I didn't expect Soulframe of all games to make me miss the old Warframe. It's funny, right? You spend more than a decade with a game. You think you've already seen every emotion it can pull out of you. But then there I was, running through a quiet forest in Soulframe, doing a simple leveling run, and out of nowhere, something hit me. This wave of nostalgia. This strange mix of joy and damn, I miss those days. And it all happened because of a stag statue in the glades of Andoran. Before we dive deeper, hey, if you relate to this at any point, drop a comment, leave a like, or subscribe. It really helps more than you think, and I love hearing your stories about the early Warframe days too. So yeah, I was leveling a weapon in Soulframe. You know how it goes. The fastest leveling method right now is going into the glades of Andoran, searching for that stag statue, and activating it so it spawns enemies that scale forever. And once you find that statue, you don't want to do it alone, because once enemies hit level 100, everything becomes tanky, everything hurts, and having even one more person makes the whole experience smoother. So I did what any Soulframe player does. Opened my party, invited 2 people, and we grouped up. And when those 2 players joined me, when we stood there as the enemies began pouring in, something clicked in my brain. I remembered the old Warframe days. I remembered how leveling used to feel, how farming used to feel, how the game wasn't just about efficiency or meta or guides, how it actually felt alive because people were right there beside you. Back then, I was a sucker to min-max everything. Yes, I played long runs, but they weren't about speed. They weren't about squeezing out a perfect farming rotation. They were about that weird, warm feeling of knowing you have 3 other players with you as you jump into chaos. I used to hang out in Genie on Eris, or do those long, endless survival runs in the Void. The kind where you tell yourself, just 20 more minutes. Then next thing you know, you've been in there for 2 hours talking about life while killing corrupted enemies non-stop. And most of the time, it wasn't even needed. We weren't forced to do level cap content. There was no reward waiting at level 100 or level 150. The enemies were sometimes downright evil, especially old corrupted heavy bombards. You blink and you're down. But the fun wasn't about the reward. It was about the company. I made friends in those runs. Not from clans, not from recruitment chat, just random players who stayed with me in mission for an hour. Then we ended up talking about music, work, school, and weird stories outside the game. Simple conversations that made the grind feel lighter. And Soulframe, somehow, gave me a small taste of that again. When I stood there with my Soulframe party, farming XP and packs and weapons, it reminded me of that feeling I haven't felt in Warframe for years. We weren't just trying to min-max something. We were chilling. We were talking. We were laughing about how wild the enemy scaling gets. And I realized something important. What I missed wasn't the difficulty. It wasn't the level cap runs. It wasn't the old systems. What I missed was the camaraderie. Now, I know there are still level cap groups in Warframe today. People still push Steel Path Endurance. But if I'm being honest, it just doesn't hit the same. Maybe it's because I'm older now. Maybe it's because the game changed direction. Or maybe it's because there's no real point to doing it anymore. And I agree with the community on that. Level cap runs don't make much sense in today's Warframe. Back then, enemies felt scary. Heavy gunners could erase you. Bombards could one-shot you out of nowhere. Now, everything is either a bullet sponge or something you delete in 2 seconds depending on your build. But this video isn't about difficulty. It's about the feeling of playing with people, of finding a party that stayed with you not because they needed something, but because it was fun. When I look at my clan list now, I see names that have been offline for hundreds of days, some for 1,000 days. Friends I used to run missions with, people I used to joke with. There were nights when we stayed up waiting for Barrow, even though he always brought disappointment. There were clanmates who helped me farm my first prime set, and I helped them farm theirs. And now their names are just gray, faded, like memories caught in a loading screen. Sometimes I want to message them like, hey, come back, we're finally going to Tau. Warframe now is a different game, not in a bad way, but different. Everything is solo-friendly. You can farm almost everything alone, Even when you join a squad, it's usually fast, quiet, transactional. You farm something, say your goodbyes, and then move on. Even the weekly circuit runs, where you're supposed to spend a few rounds together, still feel quiet because everyone is focused on clearing tasks, not chatting. Player interaction isn't gone, but it's rare, and that's what stings a bit. I get why Warframe shifted this way. New players are the priority now. The game has to grow, it has to stay accessible. And honestly, Warframe needed that direction. But something small slipped away in the process. That spark of community that used to make the grind magical. The feeling that you weren't just playing a looter shooter, you were playing in a weird, friendly universe with people who somehow made the farm less lonely. The last major content that pushed veteran players to actually talk to each other was trials. Raids. And you know how that ended. They were deleted. Sure, raids had elitist groups, but you know what? Those groups at least formed within clans, and most of the time, they stuck together. You didn't see them dragging down a clueless random player in region chat over and over. Meanwhile, Eidolon hunts replaced raids. And suddenly, we had a public playlist where new players were getting yelled at every night because someone didn't bring the correct build. You know how toxic that cycle became. Instead of bringing players together, it sometimes pushed them apart. I don't want to make Warframe sound bad. I still love the game. It's been part of my life for more than a decade. I take breaks, I wait for new content, and I always come back. But that feeling of camaraderie, it's not the same anymore. And I think a lot of older players feel it too. We're not asking for much. We're not asking for better rewards or giant endgame grinds. We're asking for content that brings people together again. Content that makes you want to talk, laugh, and spend time with others. Something that gives veteran players a place to belong. But here's the part that surprised me. Soulframe gave me that feeling, even though the game is still in pre-alpha. During Prelude 12, when so many new players jumped in because of the founder packs, the game suddenly felt alive. World bosses were fun because you could fight them together 3 times. People were chatting, asking questions, helping each other. And leveling in the glades of Andoran, even though it's pretty simple, became fun because you had company. Maybe I'm in the honeymoon phase. Maybe it's just the excitement of a new world and new systems. Maybe this feeling won't last forever. But for now, Soulframe gave me something I didn't expect. It reminded me why I used to love Warframe so deeply. Not because of the weapons or the story or the endless updates, but because of the people. And that's what I miss the most. The friends I made, the conversations we had, the nights we didn't want to log out. Grinding with strangers who somehow became friends. Feeling like the missions were just the background and the real content was the players. I'm curious what you think, especially if you're new to Warframe or Soulframe. Maybe your experience is different. Maybe you're in the phase I was in years ago, meeting people, forming groups, building memories. If you're in that stage right now, treasure it, because one day you'll look back and realize those simple missions were actually something special. And for my fellow veterans, I'd love to hear your stories too. What moments do you miss? What memories stick with you? Maybe we can bring back a bit of that old spark just by talking about it. Because at the end of the day, games change, communities change, people move on, but the memories stay. And Soulframe reminded me that I still care about those memories more than I thought. If you enjoyed this video or felt even a little bit of what I'm talking about, leave a comment below. I want to read your stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we're going to talk more about Soulframe, Warframe, and everything in between. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.